Okay, the first item, the roll call.
We have everyone here except for Mrs. Chenoweth.
All right, approval of the agenda. I think we have some add-ons that we need to do. The first one will add to new business, which will be a budget amendment for a SEMCOG grant, and that'll be item F, 7F. There's also an additional list of bills to be added to so there'll be an add-on of 9, we'll call it 9A, list of bills, and then we're going to do a 9B, list of hand checks. Wasn't there a list of hand checks or something?
That's part of the list.
Oh, that's part of the list of bills. Okay, then we don't need that one.
And really, the add-ons are just part of the regular list. It's the same agenda item. It's not a separate agenda item.
Okay, we won't do that.
So we don't need a,
Right.
Covering my bases.
we'll just sum up.
Anything else that anybody like to add? You think of? All right. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
I would move to approve the agenda as amended.
Support?
Okay, we'll
I
just-
have a question on the agenda. From what I can remember about special meetings, it has to be advertised whatever information you're gonna be addressing that night. And I just wondered how this is gonna work, maybe, unless the advertisement said that. You can't add new business unless you advertise it on a special meeting.
That is correct.
So we have to pull that SEMCOG thing off.
Even though it was sent out
Well,
like Monday?
And I will tell the board, I talked to Mr. Hamel this afternoon on that item and pointed out that there was a section of the agreement that said that this agreement signifies that the township has the necessary budgeting in place. I mean, I'm not quoting it exactly. And so that, to that extent, a budget amendment is within the scope of the agreement. I've never gotten down to that fine of a line between things, but the
But
agreement.
unless the announcement, the meeting notice said we're gonna be addressing any of this stuff besides red poppy, we
Well,
can't
the-
address any of it.
The agenda was sent out with everything through, originally it had everything 7A through D, and then we revised it yesterday, which was before the deadline, to include E, which was the SEMCOG grant agreement.
But that's not the same thing as advertising the special meeting, if I'm correct.
Well, the notice for the special meeting was posted 18 hours in advance.
The notice wasn't, the agenda was.
Excuse me?
I mean, the notice for the special meeting was, I assume.
I was treating the agenda as being the notice of the special meeting. If I'm mistaken on that, is there a separate notice we did?
When you say notice, what are you referring to?
From my memory, Michigan law requires you to post any special meeting and the specific items being addressed at that meeting in 3 public places.
Okay.
That's our
so-
bulletin board outside.
Right. We posted that, we posted the original agenda, and then when we revised the agenda, we posted the revised agenda.
So is posting the agenda the same as posting a meeting notice?
And yes, I think so.
Okay.
So it really becomes a matter of, you have a grant agreement in front of you, that if you approve it, you're signifying that you've taken care of the necessary budgeting for that agreement to be implemented. Now, I have sat here and you have always dealt with budget amendments as a separate item.
Let me ask you this, is it even feasible to pass the grant agreement without passing the budget amendment tonight?
Yes,
Okay, so we could leave the budget amendment till the next meeting.
yeah, it's only 2 weeks away. You
Right.
could do it that way.
So let's just not do that tonight.
Because I will tell you, I don't want you to approve the agreement that's in front of you tonight. I'll have some language for you when we get to that point, but So,
All right, so then we need to amend the motion to remove item F, budget amendment for grant, some kind of grant. Do you
Remember
agree?
who made, did I make the motion?
Yeah. Technically, we have to all vote on a change to a motion.
I don't think we even voted on the motion at this point,
Right.
so.
But once the motion is made and seconded, it belongs to the table, and the table has to approve any changes to the motion.
Right.
So we need a motion to amend the motion.
I would move to amend the motion to accept the agenda as originally presented.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported.
So let's vote on just whether or not we're gonna allow the original motion to be changed.
That's different language.
so,
Do you have a comment on that?
We're voting on the
No,
original, the modified
who
motion.
made the motion to me? It's just to put the agenda back to the way it was without the earlier
Can you
amendment.
just rescind the
No.
motion?
Okay, are you ready to vote on this?
Yep, let's vote.
Okay, Mr. Howe?
Yes.
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 Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, now we can vote on the motion as amended.
To approve the agenda as presented in
Right.
effect.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, yes?
yes,
Yes.
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 Motion carried.
That was fun.
Just one more point of clarification, the posting notice, and if you're gonna consider that agenda posting as notice, what's the time frame it has to be out? Is it 18 hours or 24 hours or?
You know, I wish I would have brought my Charter Township back with me
Never
tonight.
the time.
If you want to wait till I fire my computer up, I can answer that, but I don't remember there being a Charter Township Act 24-hour requirement.
There's a time frame requirement.
It's over 24 hours anyway.
That's why I'm questioning whether we can even get some kind of one.
It was over 24 hours when we posted
Yeah.
the revised agenda.
Okay. Beat that one to pieces. All right, next item is consent agenda approval.
I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We do-
Support.
We have a minor
Oh.
spelling error we're fixing on item, new business item B, in the third line, the letter Y is missing. So, do you wanna say as corrected?
As corrected.
Are you supporting now, Joe, or
Yes.
Brian?
We'll add the Y.
Yeah. Okay. All right,
Vote, please.
I vote yes.
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 Motion carries.
Okay, announcements and information or inquiry. Primary election is Tuesday, August 7th, 2018. Tammy's been working her rear end off for her first election, and as Mary knows, there's a lot to it, and it's an important one, so please get out and vote. The DDA's Sounds Like Summer Outdoor Music Series has now had 3 very successful concerts, and they're in Veterans Park at 7 p.m. Through August 14th. Okay, on your chairs, if you read the little statement, it relates to the next item, which is public comment. So anybody have any public comment?
That's something I want to do. Say.
Yep.
A couple things. Last night at the concert last night, former trustee Ray Palladori was there. I haven't seen Ray in a while, so it's good to see him. And he sends along his regards. And on a sad note, last 2 weekends ago maybe, we had the drowning in White Lake, and it was former Highland resident Todd Mara, who was a Highland Middle School Lakeland High School class of '82. A friend of mine after high school. We played against each other in football, so it's very very sad to learn when I read that he had passed away, but he was a great guy, and he was very involved in the Milford Mustangs football program when I was back early 2000s, and just very sad event, and he was a good guy and very involved in a lot of things, but he was a former, I don't know where he lived in Highland, but he was a Highland Middle School kid, so just a very sad event, so just wanted to pass it along.
Okay, anybody else?
Is this public comment for the Red Poppy too, or is that gonna be a separate item?
There is a separate conversation
Make
for
your comments then.
Red Poppy, and if you wanna wait till then, that'd probably be better. It's your choice, but, that note, we'll move on. New business. Public hearing for use requiring special approval for bed and breakfast establishment at 1965 Harvey Lake Road, submitted by applicant and property owner Lynn Johnson Benaglio.
That's a typo, it's 18.
What's that?
It's a typo, it's 1865.
Oh, 1865. Oh, we're getting these mistakes here. Okay, it's at 1865. Is that correct, Lynn? Okay. So we'll open the public hearing at 6:41. All right, at this time, if anybody has a comment that they'd like to make, the instructions are on your seat, so. What's that?
And the podium's over there.
Podium's here, so if anybody wants to stand up and say anything, they have their opportunity right now.
Say something. My name's Dennis Wilson. My address is 1520 Pruitt Drive in Highland. I know it's been recommended by the planning board, the zoning board, that you approve a bed and breakfast for the Red Poppy, which, as far as the bed and breakfast, that's never been what we've had a problem with them. It's the other events. And if you do approve them for the bed and breakfast, how are you going to limit these other events that they have, if you're going to limit the other events? I think that they feel that by giving them the approval for the bread and breakfast, you're giving them approval for all the other things that they do, the weddings, the showers, all the different meetings, seminars, yoga classes, a number of things that I haven't even mentioned, or I'm sure a lot of things I don't even know about. It's been the noise problem that we have a big problem with. Also, it's a zoned residential. We don't want commercial business running there other than a legal bed and breakfast. Anything besides that doesn't fit the state's definition of a bed and breakfast, and it doesn't coincide with the zoning ordinance that's zoned residential. So if you will, please, in this meeting, also address our concerns about how it's going to be limited to just the bread and breakfast. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any others like to make a comment?
I'm Nancy Hutchinson. I live at 970 Tierney in Highland at Harvey Lake Heights. And so Harvey Lake is part of, where I live and where I pay taxes. And my husband and I and my family, we moved here because it was quiet and it's a private lake, a non-motorized private lake, where we consider it like a big swimming pool, and all the kids, everybody enjoys the lake and the quiet time that we share with our families and friends, and we don't have to worry about strangers. Safe for our kids. And we also moved out to Highland because it's rural, and we like to, hopefully it stays rural and doesn't get commercialized, and that brings up the Red Poppy. We don't want a commercial property on our lake. It's residential, it should stay residential, and I agree if it's gonna be a bed and breakfast, just then keep it a bed and breakfast. Don't make it commercial where you have big parties and stuff, because I don't live on the lake. But when they had the big weddings and things, I could hear that down my street, which is probably half a mile away from the Red Poppy. And I rode my bike all through the neighborhood, like, where's that noise coming from? And I couldn't find it in our neighborhood, and that's when I found out later that it was coming from the Red Poppy. And I wasn't too happy about that. So we don't want a commercial property there, because what if they decide to sell it and then it's its own commercial? They could build anything there, commercial, a gas station, whatever. I mean, commercial is commercial. It's not, it's a single family home, residential area, and that's the way it should stay, especially on our lake. That's it for me.
Thank you. Anybody else like to make a comment?
Good evening. I'm Roxanne Everett. I live at 744 South Park. We had submitted approximately 50 signatures to the Planning Commission, and I don't know if they're in your guys' agenda packet or not. We at Harvey Lake Heights, we're not opposed to the owners having a bed and breakfast. We are opposed to a commercial business in our residential area, though. I would like to think that Harvey Lake Road is not going to become one big commercial strip, because starting up at the corner where the daycare center is, we're getting more and more commercial businesses. We of Harvey Lake Heights, who signed the petition, aren't against the Optimist Club helping children, just because we dispute the Red Poppy having events and retreats. We're not against veterans being helped by yoga. We are opposed to a commercial business in a residential area. Highland Township was submitted approximately under 150 signatures from people who vote and pay taxes and live in this township that are opposed to having a commercial business in a residential area, which, if I interpret the ordinance correctly, that's what the township is supposed to be enforcing. Now, so when does the good of the many of the people who are affected by this business become greater than the quality of one homeowner to run a commercial business? And unfortunately, there's already 2 yoga retreats that have been planned and publicized, which offer breakfast and dinner. Does that fall within the state guidelines of a bed and breakfast? Because we were told by the township board that a bed and breakfast constituted 1 meal. And the website still says it's a retreat center. I don't see any change whatsoever, other than, as much as I've been home this summer, I haven't heard any outdoor weddings at that home, at that residence. But the commercial aspect of it is still being advertised and run strong. So I would like to think that the approximately 150 signatures of the taxpayers and residents of those 2 subdivisions are just as important as somebody putting 19 beds in 1 room and having a commercial business. We should matter too. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Judy Shipley. I live at 1572 Pruitt Drive in Highland. And I just want to make a couple comments about leadership. I've worked most of my career in leadership, and I can tell you that it is not an easy place to be. There are a lot of hard decisions that have to be made. I totally understand. But one thing I've learned over the years is it's really crucial that policies and procedures are followed. And I mean, it's just really crucial that one does that. And it just keeps things going smoothly. Well, it's not always smooth, it's not always easy, but I think it's crucial that that be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Step up front.
My name is Donna Hubbard, 1556 Pruitt Drive. I live in Harvey Lake Estates subdivision. You have heard from me many times about our opposition to this whole proposal. Our biggest concern, besides the fact that law requires that they can have, or I guess states that they can have a bed and breakfast, is that they don't seem to be able to hold to that. I pulled this off of their website at 5 o'clock tonight, and I'd like to read this. The Heart of Winter 4-Day Yoga Retreat, Highland, Michigan, February 28th to March 3rd, 2019. From Thursday, February 28th to Sunday, March 3rd, I'm offering a 4-day Heart of Winter yoga retreat. This retreat includes 6 yoga sessions suitable for all levels of yoga practice, 2 2-hour yoga workshops to strengthen and deepen the practice, 3 guided meditation sessions, fresh and homemade organic vegetarian meals, and access to 12 acres of precious land for winter walks on site. The goal of this exclusive winter retreat is to make space and time to practice mindfulness and nurture the inner self, immerse ourselves in a strengthening and restorative yoga practice, and develop intention and creativity through guided meditation, a winter walk, and mandala coloring. The Red Poppy Retreat Center, with a website, offers us ample opportunity for boosting our diverse self-care practices, which will help us move through the rest of winter. You can book a massage, swim in the pool, soak in the hot tub, take a winter walk, connect with other participants, enjoy tea time, or read a book. The retreat location is easily accessible from Ann Arbor, Commerce, and West Bloomfield. Highlights: 6 yoga classes, all levels welcome. 2 yoga workshops, daily morning meditation, guided mindfulness winter walk, organic vegetarian meals, 3 breakfast, 2 lunch, 3 dinner. 3-night accommodation, access to indoor pool, hot tub, and workout experience. That talks about checking in at 4 on Thursday and then checking out Sunday. This is our concern. These people do not follow the rules. As recently as April, someone called and were told they could have a wedding there. I have friends who have been over there for bridal and baby showers recently. They will not follow the rules, and that's our biggest concern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right.
I'd just like to say one thing from here. I'm not going to go up there. I appreciate all you do. The future of our community is now living. I'm Dana Fisher, and I live at 835 Tierney, and I've lived here for 48 years.
Mr. Subba, would you ask the people to speak up, because it's very, very hard to hear them? Okay.
Well, if they're over here, we can hear
Okay,
them.
I mean, we got the fan blowing behind us here, and voices aren't projecting. Thank you.
Okay, so, any other comments? The public,
This lady, Rick, there's one lady here.
where's, I didn't see the hand back
I'm
there.
sorry.
Okay.
My name is Wanda Giroux. I don't live on your lake. I live on 1815 Hadley. We're in a similar situation where we have a beautiful, pristine lake and a nice place to live, and it's quiet. The lakes amplify sounds. I can hear people talking quietly in a boat across the way and I can hear every word they say. And we do move here for the quiet and the peace. And people that say you have a home and you rent it, they are not gonna take care of the home the way you do. This is our home. We take care of it, and we've cherished our land. We love where we live, that's why we're here. I'm a lifelong resident. And it scares me if this is allowed on Harvey Lake. That's a private lake and a very nice community. Can they do it on Dunham? Can they do it on your lake, your home, your backyard? And nobody, I think, really opposes to a bed and breakfast to introduce people to Highland and all we have to offer, and maybe get new residents and new business coming in because they're buying things in our stores. But I really feel for what's happened to some of these residents and what they projected. When these people bought this house, which had been empty, and it is nice to see somebody doing something with it, but it was residential and they knew that. And they must have had some plan all along to do something like this with it. Like I said, it's better than it being empty, but trying to turn it into a palace for entertainment for other people seems very wrong. Thank you.
Were you able to find that on the?
I couldn't find it on there.
What are you looking for?
Hey Donna, was that on their Facebook page or on the Red Poppy
Yeah, it's on the Red Poppy
website?
This is the website here.
I printed it out if you want a copy of it.
And there's the home. This is our property, talks about their property. Accommodations, talks about the accommodations. Registration, talks about, it shows the rooms and how much the rooms are. And then there's a contact us. And that's it. That's on the redpoppycenter.com. So I don't know where you guys are getting it, but it's not on this
You gotta
website.
print it out as of 5 o'clock this evening.
What's the web address?
Is it someone using a facility that's advertising
The link came off their website.
OneCarter.net.
At 5 o'clock.
I have no idea who this is, but here's what.
What she's been doing is advertising through others for the yoga classes and
No,
other
that's
things.
not true. I don't advertise through anyone, and I have not since you told me not to do that.
We haven't touched the website. We know the website needs to be adjusted. We haven't touched it until.
You tell us where we need to be.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so this is apparently a yoga something or other here. Art, yoga, film, screen, print, dance, yoga. Nothing on that site. So is this individual setting this up at their place and they know about it? We don't know that.
Yeah.
The question would be, is someone contracted with it?
Don't even answer it, Tom. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're the instructors
Click on
that are
events.
associated with
What's
them.
that?
They set it up
Click on events.
on their website so that the township won't be able to see what they're doing.
Those are old ones, 2015. It's 2014.
There's 16.
yoga and setting events. So on the tab there.
Let's see, I checked the website today, I thought I did. I don't see any links on there.
Go to Red Poppy, go to images, and you'll pull it up. Right there.
Just
Doesn't say 2019. The schedule is on images.
there's no images connected.
You said go to Red Poppy Images.
There's home, our property, accommodations, registration, and contact us.
Can we ask a question?
Description. Where are you getting it from?
I think it's from images, she said.
She's searching Google
Down.
for images of Red Poppy. You go to Google, try it. I don't know what the point of this is even.
And that's it.
It's right back to the website.
We just have to take your word for it that it's up there.
Can we just ask the question? Do you have an affiliation with this company?
I don't, I know who Carter is, but I don't have anything booked with Carter. So if he's planning something, then he will have to tell me later if he has enough people. This is how it works. Like, if you were to say, I want 15 men to come to my house, I need to book your
Yep.
place because I'm having whatever, that's how it works. You book as a group. I don't tell Carter what to do.
Well,
That's his own company.
okay. It sounds like there must have been something pre-established for him to go through that effort to advertise that much without your permission.
But I'm not advertising with him.
I
What I'm
understand.
saying is
I
he
understand.
might like the house and say, this is where I would like to have this yoga event.
Okay.
And I have knitters that are interested in doing that.
So they're booking events at the Red Poppy as a business, commercial business, not as a bed and breakfast.
You can book that at any bed and breakfast.
Yeah, you can.
You can do this at any bed and breakfast.
So when
I don't
when
think
you
so.
rent out a bed and breakfast,
Yes.
you have use of the facility, correct?
Yes.
And you can do yoga, you can knit.
Yes.
You could
They can
cook
watch
food.
TV, they can,
Scrapbooking, I mean, they do what they wanna do, they rent it as a bed and breakfast, their facility is open to them, they do what they want. If that group of people wants to have a card game, they play cards. That's up to them what they wanna do. And there's rules and regulations as far as noise goes, to not disturb people inside the house that are staying there, along with the neighbors. When it's written, everybody that comes in there gets that document, which you guys have a copy. But it's for them to rent for a weekend as a bed and breakfast, to do what they want. Whether it's a retreat, a yoga retreat, scrapbooking, whatever.
But can you serve them multiple meals a day and stay within a bed and breakfast definition?
Mr. Chairman.
That doesn't fall into a bed and breakfast definition.
Hold on, we're,
So this is our time to discuss it.
well, actually, we haven't ended the public conversation, the public session yet because,
Are we still in public comment?
yeah, because this got brought up. that, so.
If there's more public comment, then.
Okay, any more public comment?
If you haven't commented already.
If you've already commented,
I know. I don't understand how another company coming in and running a weekend and advertising commercially falls into the bed and breakfast guidelines. It's supposed to be one meal. That's what the mandate says.
well,
Is there any other public comment?
any other public comment? Okay, public comment is closed at 7:05. And thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. So the next item is consider approval, use requiring special approval for bed and breakfast establishment at 1865 Harvey Lake Road, submitted by applicant and property owner Lynn Johnson Bonaglio. So everybody had the full packet from the yes.
I thought Mrs. Chanel asked us not to vote on this meeting because she, as a representative from the Planning Commission, had a lot of input on this and has a lot to offer the board on it, and she wanted to be here for that. She asked us publicly last meeting to do that.
Yeah, that was her public statement. It doesn't mean that we need to put everybody. She voted on it. She knew what her vote was in favor of it.
We accommodate board members all the time for
Well, in this case, I'm going to recommend that she's missed the meeting, and we have more than enough people to make the decision, and we can do the discussion with the board members we have.
But the meeting was scheduled after she had plans out of town made. You know, I don't think it's fair to her to, say she's not here, so it doesn't count.
As an individual who chooses to run for a position, the position either takes precedence or it doesn't. And in this case, this is a decision that's involved a tremendous number of people and may continue to involve a tremendous number of people, and it needs to be put to bed tonight. If the individual needed to be here to make a vote, then they should have made arrangements, or they missed the meeting. That's the way it works. So, Gary, is there any requirement to vote on that? I don't see. It's an absence.
Well, there's no motion made yet. I mean, Mary could move to postpone the board's deliberation and vote to a future date, and you could, you can vote on that.
I'm not going to I'll make the motion that we proceed with this.
You don't need to make that motion.
Okay.
Because it's before you.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to move it, a motion to do that would be the appropriate way to see if the majority of the board wants to do that.
Then I will do that. I will move to postpone the decision on this item tonight till the next regular board meeting.
Are we still talking, or are we waiting for a motion? I think we need to step through this line by line, okay? Because I've seen some things in there that kind of caught my attention.
Well, there's a motion that hasn't been seconded.
We need to.
Is there anybody from the planning commission here today besides?
Beth, is there from the planning
Beth's here.
commission?
There's no second.
Okay, there's no second. The motion dies. Then we're gonna-
One thing I could just share with you.
Yes.
The planning commission motion was condition 3, referenced a section of the state law, MCL 289.1105D. That's a section of the food law in Michigan, and that statute does not limit a bed and breakfast to one meal. It says breakfast and other meals. So that is not a limitation of our ordinance, and it is not a limitation of any state law that I have seen.
Okay, thank you.
One other thing, I provided to the 3 full-times a draft of a motion. I don't know if time allowed you to print that for the other board members.
I didn't. I thought you said you were bringing copies.
I did.
Okay.
I have a single copy of it, so.
And just what I'll tell you, it is based on the Planning Commission's recommendation for conditional approval. It's a template which is based on a conditional approval, but allows for the township board to modify, add to conditions. You have other options, as Beth's memo points out. You can approve unconditionally, you can deny, or you can table if there's more information you want. And I've already identified one change I need to make to that, but you're not even there yet. So.
Okay, I guess for discussion purposes then, what I'd like to start out with is, in this, the planning commission did recommend to approve the bed and breakfast, and there is attached to your package a special use permit that was drafted. And if everybody would go to page 2 of 4, these are the item number 4, the board's conditional approval of special use was after conducting its own public hearing on July 25th, 2018, with the conditions of that approval, which are conditions and requirements of this permit being as follows. Let me put them up on the board here.
Page 50.
Page 50. See if I can get it there. Page 50. Well, if you can read them here. What's that? Okay, the first item, the subject property shall be the permanent residence of the applicant, who shall be physically present and in residence whenever guest rooms are rented. Item B, the applicant shall provide proof of residence to the township on an annual basis, such as driver's licenses, voter identification cards, or other evidence of residence. Item C, all activities on the subject property are limited to those of a bed and breakfast establishment as defined by both Highland zoning ordinance and state law, MCL 289.1105D, namely that the uses shall be limited to providing overnight accommodations to transient tenants and breakfast or another meal to such tenants at no additional cost. D, the facility shall not offer meals or other goods or services to any person who is not a bona fide overnight guest. E, any activities conducted outdoors by or for the benefit of overnight transient guests shall be limited to the hours of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. F, the total occupancy by transient tenants shall not exceed 26 persons. G, any use of Harvey Lake by overnight guests shall be limited to not more than 2 non-motorized watercraft, kayaks, rowboats, or canoes. H, the facility shall be open to annual inspection by the zoning administrator, building official, and fire chief, consistent with zoning ordinance section 10.05.d.4. An appropriate set of written guest rules of conduct, including prohibitions against excessive outside noise, shall be posted in conspicuous location both in each sleeping room and in common areas used by guests. Compliance with all other provisions or prohibitions outlined in the supplemental provisions of the zoning ordinance for a bed and breakfast establishment consistent with the zoning ordinance section 10.05. The applicant understands and agrees that the township staff will periodically monitor advertisements, news stories, reviews, and other items appearing in print, on television, or radio, and social media or other internet sources to determine the applicant's ongoing compliance with terms and conditions of special use permit and ordinance regulations. Okay, in that section there's 2 items that create, I think, an undue, it puts the township in an undue position by trying to check in, and it's a what you'd call regulation that I don't think is enforceable. And that's forcing the individual to produce a driver's license or voter education cards or other evidence of residence. The assessing already does that. Every year the county tracks that. We hear immediately if there's any issues or somebody has relinquished their PRE, or we're notified annually. So there's no need for that item to be in that document. Another item is any use of Harvey Lake by overnight guests shall be limited to not more than 2 non-motorized watercraft, kayaks, rowboats, or canoes. Number one, we can't trespass to go see who's in those canoes and kayaks on a lake. That lake has access from another piece of property that most people don't realize. There's 23 acres of property the township owns that's open to the public that adjoins that lake. So you can't say that the public doesn't have access to it. They do. It's not a state access, it's a township access, but it's open to the public. So that makes it almost impossible for that to be an item that we'd even want to attempt to enforce, and how would you? So I'm recommending that items B and G be stricken from this for those particular reasons. So that's 2 items that I'd like to have stricken. If we go on in this.
Can we discuss that a minute?
Sure.
Because a big concern of the neighborhood is that they are residents and the use of the lake. And I know the planning commission took a lot of public comment and debated this very thoroughly, and that's why I wish Mary was here, because she could give you those points too. But I don't think it's an undue burden to prove that you live there. You know, I don't understand why that's such a burden to prove that they live. In fact, I would ask them, are you living there? Are you permanent residents there?
Yes, I live there.
And so why is it a problem for them to come in and do that every year?
Because it's putting out an enforcement issue on it that's already being enforced. It's already there. There's no need to have that in the document and who's going to do it?
If they move out of that house,
it doesn't identify any individual that's going to be responsible for checking those driver's
so then we
licenses.
can do that.
I thought they lived in Duck Lake. They have another residence.
They used to. Yeah, please hold the public comment. So anyways, from that point, I think that's a unnecessary, undue burden, and I don't think it's something that we need to be wasting any additional township time on.
I have some comments.
Yes.
Item 2, okay? Paragraph number 2.
Where are you at?
Page.
So B.
Page 1?
Page 1.
I can't.
Yeah, we gotta speak up a little bit.
Joe, you gotta speak up too, so.
Page 1, according to the applicant for the special land use, subject parcel was purchased as a single-family residence with intent to operate a bed and breakfast established and retreat center. That's what her application is for. Is that correct? It says in R15, single-family zoning district, bed and breakfast establishment is a use permitted with special approval. Retreat centers are not listed as a permitted or special land use, except when associated with a large-scale institutional use. Is that correct?
That's what it's stating.
Okay. So for retreat-type activities that occur, that would be in violation of that, is that correct?
I think where we have the problem is, what's the definition of a retreat? 1,000 people? 5 people? 1 person?
Doesn't matter what.
Can
Doesn't
I
matter.
step in here, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The way the planning commission approached this was that they put a limit on the number of beds, 26 persons. So if
29
overnight
beds.
guests come and want to engage in other activities while they're there, that's still bed and breakfast. It's if you opened the doors and said, today we're having classes on such and so, and let anybody come in off the street, then it becomes something other than a bed and breakfast. So that was the line they drew, based on definitions. Was if you're staying overnight and you're a guest, you're in a bed and breakfast. If you're just coming to the Red Poppy to do other things at the site, that is not. a bed and breakfast activity.
Well, it would seem to be that, it sounds like outside parties are coming to contract to rent the property.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
So that
But this limits it to
means
26
she's not
people.
the landlord of the room, okay? Somebody else is renting the property. Is
No,
that
that's
correct?
not true.
That's
No.
not true?
No, because say if 14 women came and wanted to have a cousin's weekend, they can come rent 3 rooms from me and still play games and swim in the pool and play cards. It's the same situation.
Okay, and this yoga person, how does that fit into your facility then?
He would do the same thing. He would organize his group of people, they would rent the space from me, and it would be their group of people renting the bed space from me and then utilizing the area that he wanted to do yoga teaching.
So would they pay him for yoga lessons then?
So
Yeah, that's not my business.
Well, here's, according to this list, no, we're not, no public comment, thank you, appreciate it. But so, according to this that was put on my desk, the premise is, you pay for a dorm room of $520, early bird is $490, or a semi-private room for $625, early bird $595. So what you're doing is you're renting the room for the night. And with that room comes these things, which is exactly what we were just talking about. These are specifically for the people who have rented the room overnight. So it's a bed and breakfast with the bonus of yoga that goes along with it.
But what if there's more people coming than what rooms she has? If she has 16 beds and there's 25 people there, it's not just the people renting rooms that are.
That's what the special use says, though, it's good for up to 26 people
What if there's more than 26 people?
overnight.
Yep.
And that's who would participate in it, right?
Okay, so,
Well, my question goes back to, since retreat centers are not listed as permitted for special land use.
Right, and they're calling themselves a retreat center.
That's what's confusing me, okay?
Take it off your website.
It's a retreat center, what is it
We just
gonna
haven't
be?
changed the website since this started. We've told this at the beginning. We haven't touched a thing since you guys told us, don't touch a thing, so we haven't.
so that's a semantics issue.
Well, it's a pretty big semantic, I mean, just trying to be aware of it, okay?
Well, from a strictly ordinance point of view, we don't have a definition for a retreat center. So the planning commission took the position that if you're renting a room, you're in a bed and breakfast, because we don't have a retreat center defined. We can't differentiate between a bed and breakfast and a retreat center other than going to common dictionary language or something. So that's where they drew the line.
I asked, Beth, can I ask, is there any other things we should, I mean, obviously you're privy to the planning commission. Is there other stuff that we should be aware of that in the decision-making process that, from your observation, that would be, anything else that would come up that you think that would be?
You know, there was a lot of discussion about, regardless of how you view the bed and breakfast, it's also someone's home. And so they were trying to be cognizant of not overly restricting the Benogwick family's activities in their home, but not at the same time throwing the doors open to any activity that you could, you know, perceive to be commercial. So it's a fine line.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, going back to the language, retreat centers are not listed as permitted or special land use except when associated with large scale institutions. So what are we doing in this draft?
Speak up, Joe.
It's not a
Concerned
retreat
about the
center.
words retreat centers are not listed as a permanent or a special land use. So how are we dealing with that?
We're saying they're not a retreat center. They can't have day retreats.
Except that when people go there, they're having a retreat center.
No, they're staying overnight at a bed and breakfast.
You can call it whatever you want, a retreat or a group of people getting together. If the retreat's the bad word, we can change the
Well,
word.
I'm just trying to look at what it says, okay, and I've heard the retreat word bounced around, several times tonight, so I'm trying to accommodate my thoughts, the people that are concerned about, a large group of people coming together versus a bed and breakfast by itself, so.
The planning commission thought of a retreat center as something more like, you could open the door to day guests. A lot of retreat centers have day retreats.
Walled
Classes
Lake has
have-
that outdoor center over off Sleeth Road. It's a retreat center.
It doesn't necessarily imply you stay overnight.
Gary?
So, the definition of bed and breakfast in the ordinance, it's not that long, I'll read it. A structure which is occupied on a permanent basis by a family or household, which rents rooms to individuals and/or families on a daily or weekly basis. To individuals and/or families. Now, if we're gonna operate under that, whoever the fellow was on his website, I don't know if individuals are the ones that pay for the rooms. But if it's some outside business that's renting a block of rooms, that's going to run afoul of this definition. And there's nothing in what you have in front of you that would allow this definition to be disregarded. So if their business model is to take reservations and payments for blocks of rooms by an entity rather than an individual or a family, that's not a bed and breakfast under this definition.
And that's the point I was trying to stress. because-
Okay, I'll use
And I
a
think that's
different
the
example.
problem.
The other definition that is in the ordinance, and I'm quite certain that this was discussed at the planning commission, is a banquet or meeting hall. Now, building or part of a building used for purposes of entertaining a large group of people where food or beverages may be provided, and where a catering facility may be included. The last sentence. Use shall also include a building or part of a building in which facilities are provided for such purposes as meeting for groups of civic, educational, political, religious, or social purposes. So if, again, going by the ordinance definitions, if that type of activity is occurring, then it's not a bed and breakfast. If you were to approve this evening, you're not approving the use of it as a banquet or meeting hall. You're simply approving it as a bed and breakfast, and again, the only thing I've heard, if I heard correctly, is the practice of renting blocks of rooms to an entity might run afoul of this. But
So if I rented a block of rooms for a group of my friends from college, I can't do it.
They have to each rent their own room.
I didn't draft this, but it seems to me it's trying to define husband and wife on a weekend trip that, they're gonna stay at the bed and breakfast, or their family's gonna stay at the bed and breakfast. Could this facility be used in the same context? Yes, but that entity that is telling people if we get together at this location, we can do some yoga. Those individuals that want to do that need to book that room themselves.
Oh, I see.
They need to be the registered.
That's what I would read this to say. That's the way I would interpret this language. And that may not prohibit the business model, but it certainly doesn't make that business model as easy. It doesn't make it easy for that outside third-person business to put together a package deal, and then you pay me, folks, and then I'll take care of paying for the rooms. That, in my mind, would not be allowed under this language of the ordinance. And that could, not saying would, I made that mistake a long time ago where I didn't distinguish, that could indirectly limit the amount of that type of activity if that doesn't work for those vendors that want to use this site.
So just for public purpose here. What you're watching is you're watching a crafting of what's a bed and breakfast. We don't have any in Highland. None. So how do you establish something that many people do on a annual basis? They go someplace else and they rent somebody else's house and they have a great time, and basically maybe they go over to the west side of the state and rent a house and trash it and come back and they didn't wreck their house, you know. I'm not saying they trash it, but what I'm getting at is, please listen to the whole content of this and understand that we're trying to help develop a definition for what we already have in the ordinance, but we haven't done a very good job of defining. So this is that type of an element. In other words, here's some things that say B&B, bed and breakfast, is allowable in this situation. Then you go to the state statute. Well, what does it say? Not a whole lot. Now we've got somebody who has to interpret, is this a model, a good model or a bad model? And I think you can see that the question I asked, can I book it for all my friends? Well, apparently no. But if I told my friends, why don't you book it for a certain night, and here's the night we're talking about, and they each went and booked it, then that might be an acceptable model. We haven't discussed that part yet. So this is kind of, it's flushing out the questions and the answers in what the Planning Commission has recommended. So, Neil, we can't do that. That attorney in you is wanting to jump out. Yes, sir.
So, getting back to this definition of banquet meeting hall, again, what I've not been asked to give an opinion, but if there are, groups or entities out there that, rent it and they tell other folks, no, you got to book the room yourself. But if it results in the facility being used for purposes as a meeting for groups of civic, educational, political, religious, or social purposes, I think you may be running into a problem. Now, the special use permit you have in front of you, granting the special approval you've been asked to give, doesn't allow use as a banquet meeting hall. Okay, it doesn't allow that. And if group activity were to continue, if you approved it, and group activities continued, you could have a violation of the ordinance, unless the ordinance is changed or unless this section is interpreted differently. I mean, a yoga class isn't, I don't think it's civic, I don't think it's education, but I guess maybe it is educational. You see my point.
But they have weddings and other things too, so it's not just a yoga.
Mr. Dory, we got testimonials in all of the public comment we've received, written and stuff, and emails of groups of 50 people coming and having meetings there. And that's what I think, or I hope, that the Plan Commission was very adamant about not allowing, because that's not a bed and breakfast.
That would be correct. At a minimum, anyone there has to be an overnight guest.
So any meetings of any type that were not overnight guests getting together while they're there.
Prohibited.
Yes.
Well, okay, now we're talking about my home.
Clear.
Now we're talking about my home.
That's what I wanted to make clear, because that is part of the issue that the neighbors have with this whole thing. And I see as a violation of a bed and breakfast if you're gonna have groups of people over.
But if it's a group of friends that come over, you can have that at your own house, Mary.
Yes, I belong to the Optimist Club. I would have them at any house I lived in. I'm part of that group.
But then you don't be a bed and breakfast.
That's besides the point.
Okay, hold on.
That's their home, they're living in it.
Well,
Right.
please, this is our discussion right now, so.
Clearly, a banquet facility in the ordinance, and it goes in the C1 district. I mean, it's considered to be a commercial use. Okay, so I mean, you have to read this definition reasonably. Okay, I mean, if you read it literally, a building where the facilities are provided for purposes as meeting for groups. I mean, that to me is describing someone making it available to outsiders, not someone that can't use their living room for a social gathering. That would be absurd.
But in essence, that statement that's in there is absurd, because it does state that. In my individual point that I made, is that because I invited my friends, it's a social gathering. We can't meet, they live in California and they live all over the country, and you invite them so you can all meet in one spot, and it's a social gathering, so it's not allowable. That statement in there is.
I didn't say that this was well written.
No, I agree.
But the definition of a banquet facility says social also. So it still falls under a banquet, even though it's.
How big is a group? Is 2 people a group?
There's 26 a group.
So if a couple comes to the center and it has social time together with each other, is that a banquet center? They're a group and they're having social experience.
So the 1005 says a bed and breakfast shall not include a banquet facility. Very last sentence. So clearly there's a distinction between these two defined terms.
But you don't have to spend the night at a banquet.
So you have to look at the definition of a banquet facility.
And you look to the rest of the ordinance. Again, the banquet center is considered to be a commercial use. But if somebody, bottom line is you can approve this tonight and you're not approving the use of this as a banquet meeting or hall, and maybe we have to figure out how you're going to interpret this, because I don't think you've ever had to.
That's correct, and you hit the nail on the head.
None
of this will come out until we start something. You don't do it, you don't define it, it doesn't happen. And the thing is that ordinances are, you can call them law, but law is a flexible tool. It's a tool that has lots of room for definition and lots of room. Laws are also changed, and I'm not saying that we change all the laws, but I'm saying that there are cases where you sit down and as a reasonable group, the planning commission goes, well, what if, and what if, and what if? Okay, then yes for that, and no for that, and no retreat center. But you don't define it. What you've just done is you've created a situation that pops up like tonight. So the only thing that you can really look at is not the only thing, but my personal approach is that we have the first situation of a bed and breakfast in Highland. And we have in our ordinance that it's allowable to do a bed and breakfast. Now, did the Benaglios do what they were supposed to do? There's a whole bunch of stuff that went on before. What we have to do right now is we have to look at it from a different set of eyes and say, ignore the Benaglios and take the human part out of it. What's the thing that we're trying to accomplish here? And that's that somebody, an entity, has asked to have their property deemed a bed and breakfast. It took some other steps to get it to that level before it was acceptable to the planning commission to even hear it. And I think that you have to accept that those individuals are going to be required to follow through. Where before the requirement to follow through was how do we enforce it, when did we hear it, who heard it. The whole point was the discussion about a bed and breakfast was brought up before they bought it. There's no documentation anywhere that states that they were given the adequate information for them to make the decisions that they made. You can always accuse them of ignorance of the law is no excuse. They probably should have come in and asked a few more questions, but made some assumptions. Assumptions are the most dangerous thing you can do. You need to look at we all just kind of think, well, why would I have to go ask that question? Well, it's obvious that in this day and age, you got to look at the size of that book and all the rules and regulations that we have in this community, and every one of you are doing something wrong. I don't care who you are, you're probably doing something wrong. Because somebody tried to make language that would cover a whole bunch of things to maybe keep people in peace and harmony. Well, obviously it doesn't work all the time. And in those scenarios, we have to look at and say, how can we help it work most of the time? And if it doesn't, then we got to look at fixing things. And you're looking at a situation now where we're trying to make something move forward that says we can allow this. And at the same time, and this is my interpretation, we have language that follows that says, no, you can't. That's the way I see it. No, you can't, because that's social. That's ludicrous.
Well,
so it needs to be changed, but guess what? We can't change it tonight.
But is this state law that you're referencing to?
No, that's our ordinance.
so we're talking, the essence of zoning ordinances are uses. Okay? And the ordinance defines a use, again, pretty short. The principal purpose for which land is, or building is arranged, designed, or intended. Okay, so you're looking at what's the principal use here. If you approve this, the principal use is going to be a bed and breakfast. If you banquet meeting hall, that's a principal use. Okay, that's not what you'd be approving. So, I mean, you can have overlap on the things.
Actually, the principal use remains a single-family residence with an accessory use of.
Well, it wouldn't be an accessory.
Does the state of Michigan have a definition of what's a banquet facility and what's a bed and breakfast?
Dennis, I know it's a good question, but we have to.
I have a comment on this.
Yeah.
Okay. We talked about you're an optimist and you belong to the club, and you want the optimists to come to your house. So you invite them over at no charge. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. So anybody in the neighborhood can always have some group to come to your house, right? At some time. So I don't see an issue with that. There's no charge.
Right.
Is that clear? If they come into your house and you have an optimist club gathering.
Right.
Okay. Has nothing to do with the bed and breakfast.
Right, not at all.
Traditionally, as I remember when I was growing up, a bed and breakfast was simply someone who came into town and they stayed overnight and they got a meal and they took off and went away. So we have a variance going on with the new generation of what is a bed and breakfast, okay? So we have to sort that out. And I think what the supervisor was alluding to is that we really need to come into a better understanding of all that. In the meantime, okay, it is strictly important that you operate, or you would operate, only as a bed and breakfast, not having some company come in and bring you 20 yoga people so that you can rent them space, because I think that's going to go clearly against what everybody's thinking of, in the correct process of how we're going to accomplish all this. Because you're going to be stepping away just from a bed and breakfast, or you're using the bed and breakfast as a ways and means to bring in other activities. And I think that's a big fear that people have. What's the principal purpose of a bed and breakfast? And it's for typically transients coming through for an overnight stay and a meal. If we get beyond that, then you're opening that scope. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying it's maybe not the right thing to address tonight. So that's why I'm bringing it up. Okay.
But a bed and breakfast isn't always just a one-night deal. I've gone up north before
Well,
and spent
it could be.
weekends,
It
and
could
stuff.
be.
So I'm just saying that, it's not just necessarily a one.
Could be more, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's, and when I was at the bed and breakfast up in Charlevoix, they fed you breakfast, and they also had other food throughout the day, too. It wasn't a full meal, but they put other stuff out for you, which was really nice, actually.
Yeah, understand.
So, and things to drink or whatever. So it was more than just a bed and a breakfast in the morning. The one time I stayed there was a whole family that came to get together, former Charlevoix residents, 3 brothers and 2 sisters or something. They all rented rooms and did the same kind of thing. They were there for the whole weekend too, and they were there for that reason to, come back and visit.
That facility was
Sure,
zoned.
it's like a reunion, yes. And I don't know and I honestly don't know what was zoned up there. It was in Charlevoix, but I'm just saying that it's more than just the one-day deal.
Gary?
So maybe one final comment. If you're trying to distinguish banquet and bed and breakfast, I was said earlier, bed and breakfast is rented to individuals and families. Okay, the banquet talks about for groups. So they kind of tie together. So if you don't have these third-party vendors that are booking groups, that would suggest they're not serving as a banquet facility. If it's just individuals, families booking a room.
Or rooms.
Room.
Could be more than one.
Right, I mean,
Yeah.
that is a distinction that you can work with in the context of the existing language. And the applicant, if they were to get an approval, could work with. And I don't think the ordinance requires them to look beyond the booking. You book a room for John Doe. 2 minutes later, Mary Rowe books a room. And, you know, it turns out you had 10 people booked a room on the same day. I don't think the applicant or the holder of the bed and breakfast approval is required to say, wait a minute, this is fishy. I think this is a group that's actually booking with me. We can't. We can't require the owner to go to that extent.
How are we gonna enforce it?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that's what you have to work with, you know. Banquet is for groups, and bed and breakfast is for individuals and families.
Okay, question. So in the case of, let's just use the yoga for example, okay, and again, I'm trying to be objective here. You get 20 people, they pay you for a room. Is Mr. Yoga gonna come in the next day and then charge them money to give them yoga sessions? Or how does that work?
She has
If
no
somebody was
idea.
gonna come in, does that make it then commercial at that point? If somebody's coming into your facility who's going to charge people to have yoga classes, or is that gonna all be free?
That would have nothing to do with me.
Okay, well, but it does because it's your property, and if you're bringing in, or someone's coming in to charge a fee for the residents that are sitting there at your place, it's starting to become quasi-commercial, and I think that's what some of the concerns are about. You know, because how do you define that, okay? You wanna have some meetings at your place free, and I understand that, and I can have veterans come to my house and we can talk about things. But if you start getting into some kind of situation that you're gonna invite other people who are in it for commercial reasons, and they're gonna be charging fees, now you're using the property to incorporate a partial commercial activity. I think that's where people are concerned about. And what Rick said, yeah, maybe as time rolls on, we might be able to figure out some solutions, because it will only be successful if the entire immediate neighborhood and residents come to an agreement that it will work. That's the big thing we're looking at right now. This needs to be harmonious to everyone. So I think tonight's objective was to possibly get started as a bed and breakfast and then stay focused on that and get through that. And then we work aggressively, both as a board, as a zoning ordinance and planning commission, and with neighbors. We need input from everyone. How will this work? How will it be comfortable for everyone? So there's fine lines between commercializing something, making a profit on something, opening your house free to groups. That's okay, I'm proud of that. I know lots of people are the optimists. I'm optimistic about the whole thing.
But isn't the point of having a bed and breakfast to make money?
For the bed and breakfast, but I'm saying if other groups are coming in to charge money for their services, where does that put it with respect to the neighborhood? Okay.
Well, my opinion on that one is, what if it's an innocuous activity? I see innocuous in that the people who are living absolutely next door to it don't know what's going on. Then that's innocuous, and to just try and do an overall thing that says, hey, any noise is unacceptable. Well, I'm going to throw this out as an example. A week ago, Saturday, 5 o'clock, a band fires up on the house across the lake from us. Noise, full bore, bouncing off of my walls. I didn't call them up and tell them to stop, because they have a right as individuals to do so. The same as the Benaglis do to have weddings for their relatives, which those were that started all this stink. So from that perspective, what we need to look at is they're are or may very well be some very innocuous things that could be a benefit to people around the community and outside the community, that adds value to our community as a whole, because people come here because of the beauty of the place, so on and so forth, that could work well in that environment. But until you can define that, we can't do anything about that. So at this point, what this boils down to is, Mr. and Mrs. Benaglio, you can do a bed and breakfast if we say yes, but you can't do anything else. And that's what your neighbors are saying. Until, at some point, the planning commission maybe has to look at this thing and say, geez, this banquet thing has caused us some issues and we're gonna have to define this better. Or this B&B thing, maybe it's relative to distance from home to home, or the innocuous additional events or something else. We don't know those now, and until we have an opportunity to go and research all of the questions that everybody has, it's not fair to take the Benaglios and say, you can't do it at all. And another thing that I'd like to state in here is 2 reasons that I want to strike B and G is because they're like a hand slap. We are not here to treat anybody that way. That is not our job. Our job is to look at what we have as an ordinance and to follow it as an ordinance, and those people are no more than robots. You don't spank them with language like this, and that's what that does. We don't trust you, ma'am, because we want you to show us your driver's license. I don't ask for anybody else's driver's license. Do you live in your house? Are you legal? We don't do that. And it's inappropriate to do it in here. It was something that, okay, we're going to prove, but it's based on what everybody else is doing tonight.
I think
past experience is not what we're looking at. We're looking at future performance. And if future performance falters, then those individuals will be at the brunt of what the determination is to do with them, and that's take away their license. But until then, we have to stop the past, pick up from tonight and say, here's what you can do if we approve this. You know what you cannot do if we approve this. Don't do anything different. When things work to the point where now we have questions because everybody's raised questions about this, there's questions. What do we do? Somebody else is going to come along now because, hey, you got a bed and breakfast. I'm going to do that. Now what? We better get our butts in gear and start looking at what are the parameters. And we've got to start doing definitions that are definitions and not just a shot in the dark. We also have to look at the future. We have, as individuals, this is an older group of people, we look at the world differently than younger people do. And we got to be looking towards the future of what's the younger population feel about the way things are going to work in this community, because they're moving in and they're moving in fast. And I see it every day. So what we each believe is what the world is like is really changing fast. And so we shouldn't sit on this thing and not address this. We could just say, okay, you got a B&B and we're going to be watching you, thank you. I heard too much stuff come up that needs to have answers to it. And those answers are part of the reassurance that, we've been accused as a board of not doing our job very publicly. And it's pretty disappointing to have people come at you and say, you're not doing your job. Well, to be honest with you, there's a couple of things that haven't gone quite according to what the population would like to see done, but we're doing our job. And we're doing it at the speed and the rate and the way that we need to do it. It isn't the individuals in this community that are there to tell the elected officials how to do their job. They asked us to do it, and we're doing it according to the rules and regulations that we also have to follow, which causes issues. So those issues are time, ability to trespass or not trespass, and just flat out bad ordinance, unenforceability. So those are the things that this leads to. What are we gonna do with the ordinance as a whole, to look at them as a package and say, is this enforceable or is this unenforceable? If it's unenforceable, it's a rule that needs to go away, because all you're gonna do is have fights. And you're gonna have problems left and right. So when we start to look at things like this, and if we can't take away the personnel component of it, then we're gonna have problems moving forward. We have to make assumptions. Make an ass of you and me, just like others have done. No offense to the Benaglios, but it's made an ass of me. It's made an ass of some other people. That's the way I feel about it. I've been pretty heavily hurt by the way that this thing has gone along, especially being a neighbor of these individuals. I would not want to be treated in this way. And so to have planning commissioners whose job is to look at it totally objectively, apply a spanking in its language, that's inappropriate. We have the tools already on board to deal with these things, and some of it we can't deal with. We can't control how many kayaks are going to go out in that lake. And Mr. Hubbard, you probably would like to teach them how to use them if you had a class that you could do, because you like kayaking. So it's kind of those things where, what way do you want to go with this? You know, the reality is, you're not going to have 26 people in kayaks out there, because they may not want to have any more than 4 kayaks sitting on their property. So we can't see those things right now. So what we have to do is we have to see what's written in the language. And that's all the farther we can see. And that's what we're attempting to do here tonight, is look at what's in the language and say, can you do this? And then we have some ifs. And if you don't, then you can't do it anymore. That's a pretty simple concept. It's a pretty simple thing to do. But we have to take away any more future things that we do as a planning commission, as a board. We have to take away that personality that spanks people and treats them the way they would. The golden rule, I would not want to be treated that way, so I will not tolerate that direction. And that's why these things bother me so much. So let's all live the golden rule. Let's do unto others as we'd have them do unto themselves. You know, whatever, you know the golden rule. It's important. And it means that some of us are going to have to suck up some of the stuff we said to each other. And we're going to have to look at it and go, okay, let's give everybody a chance to see if we can't move it forward in a way that doesn't hurt anybody. The noise hurt, okay, I get it. The concept hurt because of the apparent noise, I get that. But there's a lot more to that piece of property that has value to other people as well. And most of you have never been on the property. If you have, you trespassed. And I've been on the property with permission. It's huge. And it's the kind of thing that, you know, I think we have to look at this. Let's look at the very basic component of it. What are they here for tonight? For permission to run a B&B. So, anybody else have anything to say? I took it all, sorry.
It's good to say we're all stage.
You got something to say?
I'm good.
Okay. You know, with respect to weddings, for all the folks that are here, you know, I've had occasions at my house for graduation parties and all those things. If it's for a family thing, if it's for her personal thing, we have to live with that. I mean, I've had neighbors that have graduation parties that are 20 feet from my house, okay? You live with it, okay? If it's personal and there's no money exchange and you're having a family event, that's a different thing. I think what everybody's concerned about is you don't start doing large parties. Now, if this is limited to 26 people, I don't think you're going to be trying to get a wedding party for 26 people. Okay, so I think that's going to be a very small wedding. With respect to G, I mean, maybe that should be a suggestion that you work towards, you know, not putting everybody out in canoes. You're really trying to say is that we give minimal use for the lake for those kids, something like that. And I think what we're trying to say there. Is that correct, Beth?
That's, Mr. Beach was just
So
trying to
encouraging.
put some sort of restriction on there that would be similar to what a family might use.
Because the other residents who are on the lake are probably concerned about, all of a sudden we got all these strange people roaming around. Now, you said, yeah, everybody can have access to township property. I don't know how many are out there, but I think that would be something to encourage, so we don't get a flood of people, water skiing with canoes.
Well, to just give you an example, there's about 15 homes on that lake. There's 15 or 20 homes on that lake. What about all of the off-lot people that are on the lake that just suddenly show up and they got all their kayaks and they go at it? I don't have any issue with that because they have a specific right by ownership to be able to do that.
Yeah,
By ownership, but it's stated in the things as they can go on there. It just is something that is unenforceable. We can't enforce it. So if we can't enforce it, don't put it in there.
Not done, okay?
I'm not spanking you, I'm just.
Okay, I know, I wasn't finished talking.
That's
He likes to cross over, okay. So, some of the things you said are important. There could be other 10-acre parcels in our community, other people who may want a bed and breakfast. So this group, our planning commission, really needs to come up with some logical constraints, logical opportunities to make it work. I had a birthday party at the Lazy J Ranch, okay? And we've had several events there over the years, and it's a nice thing to have, but I think he's different environment there, he's got a bigger facility, it's pretty well been established for that. So this is something unique and new, and I think if everybody pulls together properly, that includes all the neighbors from near and far, that input's important from everybody. Everyone's concerns are important, so if we don't get on board 100% together, nothing works, okay? I came here saying, well, half the people are gonna love me today and half the people are gonna hate me. I don't know which way it is, but that's the job we accept, and we have to make decisions. I'm willing to do that. So I think with some of the criteria from our counselor, I think some of those things are important that you've heard tonight. How are we gonna conduct business? This was an interesting thing to find out about the yoga thing, and so whoever's out there is doing those kind of things are hurting you indirectly that you don't even know about it. So if you've got people that you're trying to work with or to create a business flow of guests, they're doing the wrong thing by making that advertising way for you. Not at least until it gets cleaned up. Okay, we just got through the point of getting people comfortable with the fact that, okay, maybe we're gonna get a bed and breakfast, and then this comes up, who brought that in, I forget. So it puts another log on the fire, So those things have to be pushed down and not look like you've got this big marketing campaign to fill your property, okay, because that's not good. I mean, that caught me off guard, and I was right away, go,
It caught me
this
off
is
guard.
not good, okay?
You've never seen it.
So that was my concerns. I started out with item, retreat centers are not listed as a permitted or special land use. So retreat center directly or indirectly is something you need to be, cautious of, okay? Again, if you have a group that come to your place, you're not charging them, you come to your house and they're having a meeting or whatever, it's just social time, there's no fee involved. I would think anybody in the room could have somebody come to their home for whatever reason. I mean, I know women that have knitting quilts and do lots of things. 20, 30 people come to your house sometimes. So I don't want to be that strenuous as far as objecting to non-charging to have a group come to your house. I don't think that's a problem. I think we need to be concerned about the commercialization of that. Bed and breakfast should provide the regular type of cash flow from a business. There are lots of people who probably run small businesses out of their house. I got a consulting business. There's people that do little things at home. Okay? So I think that was my main concern. I'm sorry to bring that up, but it was a big word sitting there. And Counselor, thank you for your input on that. You're still awake. Okay.
All right, I've got one other item I want to talk about. There is the item that you can see on the screen called alternate section 5. There was, Beth, do you want to speak to that? That was.
Yeah, the planning commission went through and they made their motion with all that list of conditions, and then someone offered an amendment to the motion. They wanted to have a trial period. Our standard language in our special use permit is always that if you misbehave, the board can review your performance under the permit and can revoke it. They wanted to force a review at, and during the evening, it went from 6 months to 12 months to 18 months to 24 months. But the effect really is no different than our standard language, which is you get a permit, the permit's good, and if you misbehave, the board can revoke your permit. So because the motion was made, we did put that italicized language in there for you to consider, which was all it ended up being was a recommendation that you consider it, that you require a 24-month review. I recommend against it. I think our standard language is correct.
And that was going to be my suggestion, to strike that. Gary, did you have any comments about that?
I agree. My reading of the minutes of that meeting, it said 18 to 24 months, and I read the minutes, and it was never clarified, it was passed yet. I agree with getting rid of it.
All right, so
Just one comment.
Yes, sir.
In this draft motion I provided to you, you'll notice that I referred to the planning commission conditions by numbers. And that's because that's how those appeared in their minutes. Those have been placed in letter form in the special use permit. But I'm more comfortable with you acting according to the planning commission minutes and those being numbered. And as far as this one we just talked about, that was what I called the 12th condition.
Okay, so you're saying we have to convert letters to numbers?
If you do anything with the conditions by the planning commission other than alternative 5, the special use permit will need to be revised. I don't know what the motion is going to be. The draft I gave you allows for you to change their conditions. And I actually have some recommendations in that regard. I can outline them now, or if you'd like. So the planning commission had a condition. It was planning commission condition C. Their minutes call it number 3, where they referenced the section of the State Food Act. My recommendation is to modify that to add a reference to MCL 125.1504B, which is a section of the State Construction Code Act on bed and breakfast. The second recommendation was in condition small I. Planning Commission had it as number 10. The recommendation is condition 10 is modified to require that the written guest rules of conduct include notice of the limited hours of outdoor activity under condition number 5, which would be E, and that copies of the written guest rules of conduct be filed with the Township Planning Director and Zoning Administrator. I was also going to recommend 2 additional conditions. And this is because from what it's based on this section of the State Construction Code Act. The first would be, this approval shall not be effective until the property has been inspected by the township and confirmed to be in compliance with the requirements of MCL 125.1504B, with the property to thereafter be maintained in compliance with those requirements at all times. Basically, that's a section of the State Construction Code that says a bed and breakfast is considered a single-family residential use, and that every room has to have a smoke detector and has to be a fire extinguisher on every floor. The final additional condition, this approval shall not be effective until a certificate of occupancy for a bed and breakfast use of the building has been issued by the township building official. The reports I looked at indicate there's outstanding building and electrical permits, and I just think that's appropriate. But, especially electrical.
Okay, I'm going to make the motion in case URSA 18-04 to grant conditional special land use approval and approve the draft special use permit presented by the planning director for a bed and breakfast establishment at 1865 Harvey Lake Road, with the board hereby determining that the use will be in compliance with the standards in section 6.03H of the zoning ordinance, with its determination based on the July 19th, 2018 summary of those standards by the planning director that are adopted by reference, and the approval conditions being complied with. The conditions of the approval are those recommended by the Planning Commission on June 21st, 2018. 11 conditions numbered 1 through 11, and an unnumbered 12th condition calling for performance review after 18 to 24 months, except for with the following changes or additions to those conditions. The 12th condition recommended by the Planning Commission and the conditions numbered 2 and 7 are not conditions of this approval. Now, I'm assuming that the 12th condition is alternate 5. Gary, is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Condition number 3 is modified to add a reference to MCL 125.1504B, which is a section of the State Construction Code Act on bed and breakfast. Condition number 10 is modified to require that the written guest rules of conduct include notice of the limited hours of outdoor activity under condition number 5, and that copies with the written guest rules of conduct be filed with the Township Planning Director and Zoning Administrator. The following conditions are added. A, the approval shall not be effective until the property has been inspected by the Township and confirmed to be in compliance with the requirements of MCL 125.1504B, with the property to thereafter be maintained in compliance with those requirements at all times. And B, this approval shall not be effective until a certificate of occupancy for a bed and breakfast use of the building has been issued by the Township building official.
Before we get a second.
And we have one insert, if I may.
Yes.
Your second paragraph, where it says the conditions of this approval.
Okay.
Insert after that, and the special use permit.
The conditions of this approval and
the special use permit.
A special use permit.
That's all.
Okay, and my suggestion is paragraph that talks about condition number 10. I have where it talks about the rules, the written rules. I think that is actually number 9. That's letter I, right?
It was 10 in the Planning Commission's minutes.
Did some of the orders change?
Because we moved something out or.
Something got moved. They almost ran sequentially, but there was a flip. It's number 10 in the minutes.
Okay, all right, that's.
Okay, that's a motion as with the approval and as special use and a special use permit inserted. You get a support?
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. Vote, please.
Mr. Savion?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
All right. I'd like to thank everybody for showing up. I'd like to thank everybody for their input. I know that there isn't agreement on everything with everybody. So please remember what I said about the golden rule, and let's move forward and make this thing work the way it's supposed to work. So we'll have to look at standards and establish things so that if another one of these opportunities comes up, we have a better handle on it, and we don't have to go through this type of thing again where it causes a lot of angst. So at this point, I'm going to say let's take a 5-minute break, and if you guys would like, anybody that doesn't want to stay doesn't have to follow through with any more listening to me talk. Mr. Hirschberg.
Yes, sir. You ready?
Hi. How are you? I recorded that whole thing and then the cut all that stuff out. I never shut it off. All right. Where were we? Item 7C, new hire for Transportation Department. You got a memorandum from our Transportation Director, and I think it's pretty clear about needing another individual. And so to make this thing move ahead, I'm going to make a motion to hire Stacy Zukowski as a part-time driver for transportation program to start employment Thursday, July 26th, 2018, at $12 per hour, not to exceed 29 hours per week, pending on background check and required drug testing.
Done.
Did I get it right?
And they're both done.
What's that?
I asked Kim if the background check and drug testing had been done, because you had a start date of tomorrow. She said they had.
They're done,
Support.
and they're clear. Okay, moved and supported. Vote, please.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
Okay, next item, 7D, is new hire part-time floater positions and budget amendment. So Tammy or Judy, which one would you like to take the
Tammy
bull by the horns here?
We did interviews for several candidates for the part-time floater position, and we found a couple good people. We were hoping to find 5-day coverage because we need 5-day coverage. And while we found several candidates that were happy to work part-time on the long term, none of the best ones that we found really were interested in working 5 days part-time. So we started looking at this, trying to figure out how can we do this and get our 5-day coverage. And so what we're proposing is to hire 2 candidates, one for 3 days a week and one for 2 days a week. And there's room within the supervisor's budget already because of changes that were made to the maintenance staffing. So if we just transfer from one line to the other, we can make this happen and get 37.5 hours of coverage. It'll be nice because each of them can specialize and learn a couple departments and then help us out full time.
We still have three positions from like the 2009 downturn that have not been filled, and to throw that into the mix, of course the state and whoever, we're getting pressures from all over the place just to do more and more with less and less. Complete blank.
Well, the other thing about having that is that if someone is sick, you've got someone
And
who's taking
that's
extra day.
exactly where I was going, and so we have a
That overlap
person-
is real important.
Yeah, we have a person out
one
now.
person for 5 days.
And it's rather interesting the way it's completely flipped. 3 years ago, when we were interviewing for people, it was, if we were hiring part-time, it was a step in the door. They wanted full-time. We specifically asked these people, and they were all like, I don't want full-time. I want a part-time job. I have other obligations. So we had 2 excellent candidates, and it seemed like it was worth the ask.
Which one's which?
Sarah is the 22.5 hours, so she's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and Laura would be Thursday and Friday.
Well, we've got a couple of motions there. You want to
So we need
I
a
would-
motion for that?
I would move to hire 2 part-time candidates.
let's do one at a time.
Oh, all right. I would move to approve the hiring of Sarah Shapiro as a part-time floater to start employment on August 6th at a rate of $14.50 per hour, not to exceed 29 hours per week. Background check was already approved.
Support?
Moved and supported. Vote, please.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
I would move to approve the hiring of Laura Hearn as a part-time floater to start employment on or after August 6th at the rate of $14.50 an hour, not to exceed 29 hours per week. Background check is already approved.
Support?
Moved and supported. I'd pick one, Mr. Howard.
Yeah.
Just tell her you can have it.
All right. Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
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 Motion
Thank you.
carries.
That's awesome.
Okay, the next item
Budget amendment.
is the budget amendment for the, whoop, where's the wrong one?
Where is it?
Here it is. Okay, we got a budget amendment, is to move, $13,648 from the, maintenance work crew,
We're
or it's
actually
gonna be
moving
applied, we're moving,
6,000.
6,000, to the maintenance work crew, and we're moving 6,000 into a new, is that right? Did I do that right? You better talk.
No, you did it right.
For a department, supervised department floater wage. So,
Support.
okay, moved and supported. That was a motion.
Apparently,
And supported by Judy. Vote, please.
All right, I vote yes.
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 Motion carries.
Next item is, Gary, how do we want to do this one? This is the,
Well,
Yeah.
the approval and authorization for supervisor to sign Semcog transportation grant agreement. If I can address the board.
please.
I was provided with an agreement, it's called a pass-through agreement between Highland Township and Southeast Michigan Council of Governments for review. In having reviewed it, I'm not comfortable recommending that you approve it as presented. The reasons range from, there are errors in it. I mean, if you look at page 1, where it says grant recipient will, and it goes on and on for a while, and at some point, you get into things that appear to be things Semcog's going to do, but it never actually says that. And there's some other minor things. I'm not going to burden you with those, but there's two more major items. It's got some really foreign audit requirements that the township would have to agree to. Page 2 in section 3 is where these are found. And 3B, in particular, audits are to be performed by an independent accounting firm and must conform to the regulations and procedures established, and then there's a cite to federal regulations. I don't know if Plant Moran is familiar with those. I didn't.
Pretty sure they probably are, but it's still.
I don't know. And these are, things that we're agreeing to do them if we take the money. So that was a concern. The other one is the grant. One of the things is some specific software has been identified. That's one part of it, and the other part is to hire a consultant. This agreement has provisions that says these things that you are agreeing to, you must include in any contracts you enter into to implement this grant. Well, it'll be easy enough matter to do that when we come time to hiring a consultant. We just build the contract into it, but a software provider, and it looks like it's a specific software provider, I don't know if they would or not. So with that basic background, I've got language for a motion that I'd recommend you consider if you want to act on this tonight. Even though Rick sent this to me in Word, which would allow me to do my edits, I really didn't want a repeat of the Graycon thing where I gave you revisions, you approved them, only to find out that Graycon wasn't good with them as done, and we had to come back to you. So with that in background, suggested language is a motion to approve the pass-through agreement with Semcog for the Planning for Community Transportation Program grant, such as presented, and authorize the supervisor to sign the agreement subject to the following conditions. 1, changes to the agreement requested by the township attorney being made by Semcog. 2, Plant Moran reviewing and advising the township that the audit requirements in the agreement can be complied with as part of the township's annual audit. 3, confirmation that the vendor on the software does not object to the conditions that will be required to be included in the contract or purchase order for the software.
That's my motion.
I was gonna say so moved. Support.
Okay. Moved and supported. Vote, please.
Discussion?
Yes.
So this is committing how much money of the townships to, 9,000 something?
9,000 and some change. It's
And
on page,
75? And
Yeah.
where's that money coming from? Is that from the transportation department fund?
Well, we had the budget amendment, but we couldn't do it because of the issue that you had brought up.
There's a
It was-
paper in your, at your seat there,
It-
showed.
Revenue would come from SEMCOG contributions, and the expense would be bus SEMCOG.
But it would ultimately be a loan from the general fund.
Right. And the other part of this scenario is that this particular grant actually is based on multiple communities working together, and that's what the object of the grant is, to fund the planning process and any consulting we'd have to do to set up an authority with at minimum those mentioned within the document. I think it mentions somewhere in there, May. It mentions it in there.
Paragraph 27 on page 10 is where the description of the narrative description of the program. You mean which townships?
Yeah. But anyway.
Commerce, Waterford, White Lake, City of Wall Lake, Village of Wolverine Lake, and of course Highland Township.
Well, anyway, since this grant was, and the reason that they had authorized those was because we had initially applied for a grant all as separate communities, because the way it was written, it looked like you could get a grant for 50 grand apiece, and you could all get the grant and combine it, and then you'd have a nice chunk of change, $250,000. It turned out that there was a little glitch in there. They really didn't intend it for that. They intended it for planning purposes only. So they called us up and said, rewrite the last page of the grant, in essence, of which they pretty much helped, I believe, helped Kim fill in the blanks the way it needed to be, and we immediately were accepted for $50,000 with the $9,000 match, which we did bring to the board. But what's happened since then is we have as many as 7 and possibly 9 communities now that are interested in this project. So that 9,000 would then be divided by those individuals, so that would be their share. Including Don Green from Milford, who called or emailed me to ask what their share would be of the match. So at a later date, that money would come back.
Most of it.
Most of it, except for the whatever.
So the $9,000 match would be divided by however many communities.
Okay, and so that's not that much then, but it still ought to be paid out of the transportation fund, not general fund.
Right.
Gary?
So on page 10 of the agreement, and I touched on this earlier, it says this agreement hereby certifies and guarantees that the local match for the of $9,075 has been properly appropriated and provided by Highland Township. So my belief is on your August 8 agenda, you're going to have a budget amendment, however this is proposed. Even if I get my changes to SEMCOG and they say fine, and even if Plant Moran is able to provide their verification and the software vendor's good with the things that they have to sign off on, you know, Rick shouldn't sign the agreement until you made the budget amendment, so that this statement in the contract he would be signing would be accurate. Because right now, as we sit here, you have not appropriated money. And this agreement has a term that covers a half of 2 years. It runs from July 1 of 18 to June 30th of 19. So.
But I understand that, but what my point is, this budget amendment that we're looking at, it says the money comes from general fund.
No, that's
we're not even looking at that tonight.
It's a transportation fund.
There is a loan.
No, but I mean.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Didn't we take the budget amendment part of this off?
Yes.
I mean, that's gonna have to be on your August 8 agenda.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you got a sneak preview of what's being proposed, I guess, but.
The transportation fund doesn't currently have a sufficient fund balance to pay the whole 9,000, and that's partially because they're spending money and getting reimbursed later, and so they're kind of constantly in this perpetual catch-up mode. And if they had a fund balance, we wouldn't need to increase our loan to them to pay the 9,000 out, you know, initially. But since we're likely on our costs will probably only be like 1,000 or maybe 2 at the most. And it's not
Karen did a quick run through this afternoon. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
did
go
I?
ahead.
And fund balance as of today in transportation is $6,312.94. So we're getting there.
Right, but we just don't have $9,000 in there right now.
Like Gary said, that's to be addressed at the next meeting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I read this, but I would point out, I mean, if transportation is shy on money, I thought this was a reimbursement grant, where we have to spend the money before we can get reimbursed the money.
No, you just have to show you have the money set aside.
No, in terms of getting reimbursed the federal part of this grant.
That's
Except for
correct.
the $9,000. But this is our matching. We have to match 9,000.
Yeah, we're talking about the match.
20%.
Gary's talking about the other part of the 50,000. It
Well,
says
that is
we
reimbursed.
spend it and then
It's
we get-
reimbursed, but
Yeah.
where does the money come from initially to pay? Is my question. I mean, that's not my,
Basically
got-
the same place all with the rest of our money comes from.
Right.
Okay.
okay.
And then they request for the reimbursement. It's just an ongoing.
That's why we're doing this, because we want to get it into a separate authority.
No,
It
no,
runs its
I'm
own-
just talking, but we don't have that yet.
Right.
Right now, you're talking about approving an agreement, and I believe it would be like, take one of these examples. To buy the software is 21.7. I mean, if it's a reimbursement grant, we have to pay the 21.7, and then we'll get back all but
8%.
match on that.
Right.
So we got money in the budget to front that kind of money?
Plenty.
Okay.
Millions.
We may have to do a budget amendment for that part of it too.
Well, the reason it's good to have it on the August 8th meeting.
There you go. Got it. Okay, let's move on then. Did we vote on it? We didn't vote, did we? No, we had a
No.
discussion, we didn't vote. Okay,
Right.
we need a vote.
Okay. Mr. Savia?
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
All right, number 8, possible closed session to discuss confidential township attorney opinion letter on tax foreclosed properties.
Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion
What's
that
your
we,
question here?
make a motion that we go into closed session to discuss confidential township attorney opinion letter on tax foreclosed properties.
Second. Support.
Seconded. Okay. Vote please.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
All right. We're being
It's still
recorded.
10 after 7 in the morning. Watch stop today.
There's something wrong
I
with
thought
it.
this was gonna be a quick meeting.
You did? Why did you
Yeah, there
think
wasn't
that?
much on it. Okay, so we did our closed session, we're back in session. Possible, let's see, list of bills, item 9.
I would move to approve the list of bills with add-ons.
Support.
Moved and supported, vote please.
Mr. Huff?
Yes.
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 Any
Motion
public
carries.
comment?
Public comment?
I would move
Where'd they
to
go? They
adjourn.
left us.
Next meeting, I'm flying to Paris at 12:40 in the morning. So just in case you know that if the meeting runs longer, I will probably be leaving, so I have to go to the airport. So just so everybody know what's going on. We're leaving.
Harry!
Going to visit my son, so just the date we're going. So hopefully the meeting will be over at that point, but if not, I will be.
You're not wanting any long opinion letters to?
It's all right, I'm just saying I'm probably gonna be getting to the airport about 10, so as long as we're done by about 8:30, hopefully. We'll see. So everybody knows what's going on, I'll remind you, so.
All right, meeting adjourned.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, there's 2 weeks
Fun
in
time about
Paris,
the
we're gonna
hand-
fly
the
to
hand-
Poland,
the
and
handshake.
there, then